Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This is a interesting few insights that we've put together since we have been chatting to our clients, to different candidates across the continent, and then looking at different global executions and seeing, what these interesting trends are. And we've in fact highlighted 3 different challenges that we see in this talent acquisition space. So as we go along, we really would love any comments, any questions, any, tell us where you're from, tell us what you're particularly interested in. It really is such a great opportunity for us as we share these learnings to get learnings also from you, or different questions, or I'll go through it. It won't be longer than maybe 15-20 minutes, and then we can unpack and discuss. So welcome all, and we really look forward to this collaborative webinar. So we've highlighted 3 different challenges, and the first one is the challenge of the A3 age, where what we call the A3 age of work is that the anywhere, any place, any time is how the workspace is now working. And we see from Gartner report that 35% of candidates globally are now fully remote. 60% would quit for a fully remote opportunity. That's from Zapier. So the whole new thing is around these digital nomads. So we even find in France and in Germany, the French and the Germans are coming to live in Hout Bay and Cape Town, but still working for companies abroad. And literally there is this new age of boundaryless recruitment. So honestly, it's very, very important to know that even if you've just cracked the hybrid right now, actually that it's important that we do embrace this fully remote. We ourselves as HomecomingEx have established Africa Talent Hub here for the Deloitte Netherlands. So they're employing a whole lot of different South African consultants who are staying here and actually earning rands, but working for Deloitte Netherlands. So it's absolutely happening all around us. We've seen as well the rise of the chief remote officer, and the BBC have spoken about this recently. And that's a combination of an HR person combined with operations, combined with communications. And the importance there of this chief remote officer is the ability to foster productivity, connect colleagues, and strengthen wellness. We've also seen the rise of the employers of record, and those are the different companies that you have in different parts of the world who are able to allow you to place and employ candidates in different parts of the world, and they would be on their own payroll in the back end, but they're actually working for you. So EORs globally are making it possible for different candidates to be employed wherever they are. The EORs know the legislation records, they know the different labor laws, and that is becoming a very real thing. The next part of it is our face-to-face piece, and I think that's what we learn interestingly from Tabi Singh from PepsiCo, is she talks about if she is going to get people together, it's very much around those 4 C's. It's either to collaborate, or to create, or to connect, or to celebrate. So really this idea of bringing people together for a reason versus just saying, I need you here because, is a very important part of where this A3 age is going. So where that leads us on a big note is this idea of talent scarcity. And despite the recent layoffs we've seen, which are relatively short term, globally, they're reporting that 82% of companies have this talent shortage, which is crazy. They're talking, the reasons are low fertility, an aging population globally, the age of digitization, obviously needing these skills, more and more candidates wanting a part-time preference, and the power shift has definitely started to move, or at least equalize, from the person must fit the role to the role must fit the person. So it's very important in this talent scarce age to acknowledge and see this power shift. Gone are the days when there's the interviewer looking down on the interviewee and saying, well, tell me where you want to be in 5 years' time, and the interviewee now is being able to say, well, what do you have for me in 5 years' time? And we just heard a comment this morning about, somebody posted, well, my employer to be wants to have 3 references of my past employers, I'd actually like to have 3 references from their current employees. So the important part really of seeing and acknowledging this power shift, that the candidate is as important as the employer. So Forbes have recently reported on it, which is fascinating. And this is what I also learned last year, is that in some circles, candidates are actually being paid to attend the interviews. And I mean, I had to dig deep on this because it didn't really make sense. But you seeing in some circles where the actual request for a case study or a presentation is so important, that IP and understanding it and getting these key scarcely talented candidates in front of you, they're actually paying these candidates to come and attend an interview. The other part of it is we're seeing in the Netherlands, there's a great example, and I think there's a couple of examples in the States. They're seeing different companies not competing with each other, but wanting to keep the talent amongst them. So they've created intercompany marketplaces so that I think it's a lot of their data scientists, a lot of their engineers, they're making sure that between the 4 companies that they can share them and at least keep that within them. Another part of it, obviously, in this power shift is the importance of acknowledging what Deloitte call it, this global workforce ecosystem. You know, in our world, it's the permanent, part-time, fractional, the hourly talent, and understanding that more and more candidates are looking for what they're calling a portfolio career. So a portfolio of roles that would make up the equivalent of a full-time role. And I think even a couple of years ago, you know, we said to candidates, well, you know, there's no way you can continue with your, you know, your entrepreneurial thing on the side, or, you know, candidates would say, okay, well, that's fine, I'll give that up. But now you ask anybody to do that and they think you're absolutely mad. So this understanding that there is a workforce ecosystem, that it's not a candidate, it's either permanent or nothing. There are a whole lot of different ways of attracting this talent in different forms. And globally, there's been a 37% increase in companies using more contract and temp talent. So the other part of this A3 age, obviously, then, is the importance of how do we attract the scarce talent? How do we make sure that they are the ones who the candidates want to come to us? Nestle recently have stopped candidates jumping through so many hoops. They looked at their entire touch points and they realized, oh my goodness, we're making candidates wait and delay, and they've got to go through here, and many of them are dropping off because it's such an onerous process. So it's not just automation they've put in there, they've actually really made the time far quicker to be able to get back to candidates, to tell them how they're doing, to ensure that it feels like a really seamless journey in this talent acquisition space. And we at Homecoming, we see very much that when so we don't advertise, we instead would find, you know, the top 30 candidates, not necessarily only execs that we place, there's a lot of middle management that we place as well. But when we reach out to a candidate to tell them about a role, if it's a strong brand name, almost all of them will chat to us because they would always entertain a chat. Even if they're happy where they are, they're not necessarily in the market. But we have a 30% fallout of people who don't even want a screening chat if that brand is not strong enough. And as much as we try and, you know, storytell in that moment, if there's a brand out there that is strong, that is well known, that stands for something, then that really does help us have conversations and draws candidates to you. So a very important part of being able to attract talent is the vitalness of surprising and delight. And we hear it time and time again, is the importance of storytelling. We had a candidate recruitment event for Microsoft, and their whole video it wasn't about the benefits and what you do and the day-to-day. It was about these baby elephants that they were tagging, and that's how they were, you know, saving the elephants in a beautiful part of the continent. And it stuck with people and it stayed with people. And it was a very, very simple story to show the capability of what Microsoft could do. Also, there's such an opportunity in enticing job descriptions. You know, so many job descriptions talk about, this is the name of the role, the ideal candidate should, I mean, just even easily say, you know, instead of saying the ideal candidate, rather saying you could be this. You know, there's some lovely example of, you know, at this company, there's no corporate nonsense and no old-fashioned hierarchy. And obviously, it depends on your own company brand, your own company narrative, but there is such a massive opportunity to bring your own unique company tone of voice into job description. So even if people aren't in the market, even if they're going to read a little bit, they're starting to get a real flavor of what your employer brand is. Also, the very, very important part about being welcoming and hospitable, and it really should be so easy. You know, even if you're interviewing a candidate, you realize they're wrong, there are very gracious ways of being able to cut that short, leave them feeling good so that they can still go out and, you know, say good things about brands, but not underestimating that any interaction you have with anybody has a lasting effect on your brand in the wider world. There's a lovely example from Hastings Beds. So they're an American company, and they were trying to attract a top chief sales officer from Sealy Posturepedic. And they flew her in, they put her up in a Hastings bed, and they went out of their way to make her feel so welcomed. And she actually joined them. She took a less of a remuneration package because she could see the upside, and she really, really liked what they stood for. So this idea of, you know, that whole attraction piece, being very welcome and hospitable is vital. And then also clear and timely communication. And, you know, we can't afford any more to let candidates hang or to ghost them. And the point is, even if we don't have news, that is still news. So finding ways to still touch base. Hi, we're letting you know we don't have any news yet, but hope you have a good weekend. Or hi, touching base. I hope the weather's warm enough for you wherever you are. We'll hopefully get back to you next week. So just touching base, making sure that those candidates are warm and engaged through the process. And then if they're wrong, constructive feedback. And it can be as one sentence, you know, technically you weren't as competent in this part, or, you know, the winning candidate had so much more of this industry experience and we felt that you didn't, or, you know, you said too many times in the interview. Whatever it is, candidates want to know their blind spots. They really value that, and being able to reject them where they're still feeling, you know, motivated and regarding you in a good light should be an easy thing for brands to do. And then the other part of talent attraction, which is great for us, you know, in our world, we're seeing a very healthy, strong relationship and a growing need of the partnership of us. So what we do, obviously, as executive search consultants, is work hand in hand with employers. And we've seen that us being impartial brand ambassadors who can take the time to storytell, can take the time to get to know the candidate's purpose, can really act impartially as well, so that, you know, candidates can ask us quite, you know, deep questions about, you know, well, I heard this about the company, is it really true? There's a big place for us to play in that important talent attraction journey. So the last piece of this challenge of the age is how to retain talent. And Celo Govender, in fact, at a recent HR, she's the discovery of people, at a recent HR webinar spoke about this Gartner survey, which I'm sure most of us have seen. Number one reason people leave is for remuneration and benefits. Secondly, and not far behind them, is to get this work-life balance. And thirdly, is for career growth and development. And I mean, you would have thought that there'd be way more varied ratios, but actually it shouldn't necessarily be that hard. I mean, obviously every company is different. It's easy for me to say, I don't know how easy is it to do, but to help candidates have more of a balance, to be able to grow them and develop them, you know, wherever they are, and be able to retain that talent. So an important part of this thing is to be able to listen to candidates right through, to listen to your employees as they're part of you throughout. I love this quote from Andy Stanley. He says that leaders who don't listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. And we think that it starts right from that onboarding journey. So they've got great onboarding things now with the self-paced gamification. So hearing, you know, what you want to hear about next, and then that's how you learn about the company. The storytelling piece being so crucial. They talk about leaders being visible and available. It's so crucial in those first couple of months. So the ability to be able to set up sessions with new recruits, hearing and learning, and access to leaders who are hearing them. And then obviously not just waiting for the awful exit interview to chat to them, but having a regular roster of stay interviews, of checking in, of the candidates and employees feeling safe enough to tell it like it is, so that you can have that alarm bell rung with you early versus only once they've made up their mind to leave. Wellness, wellness, wellness. And I think even 2 years ago, people going, well, what is wellness? And last year, people going, oh, we should add wellness to our deliverable of how we must treat our people. But wellness now has to actually be the priority. They are saying that it's got to come right in the front of making sure that these people are good, they feel strong, they feel safe, they feel so it's not just a nice to have anymore, this wellness piece. And then another thing about retention is this flexible on flexibility. So, and I mean, it's hard. I'd love to hear your comments on, how you crack this one, because it's not necessarily easy, and we're still getting used to even a hybrid story. But not all new mothers want to stay at home with their babies. A quarter of them might want to stay at home. Another 20% might want to come full time to work. Another, more might just want to come mornings, or whatever that looks like. And I think that the fact that you can know that all people are different and listen to what they want, that you can be flexible with different employees' flexibility, and that answers your, the reason people leave for work-life balance, that there must be a clever way to ensure that, each person feels heard and can deliver the work in the best way that they feel at optimal performance. Also vitally important when you listen to them, that the opportunities for them to move laterally between departments, or maybe, they still want the promotion, but they can go and learn different things in different departments, hearing where they want to grow their career, giving them those opportunities, and making it safe for them to also put up their hand when they feel that they need some development, and being able to provide that for them. And so in our world, which is interesting because we don't just do permanent talent, we place fractional executives, we place hourly executives dependent on the need. And we were working with a big corporate recently, and they were worried about losing their chief marketing officer. So the solution was actually taking her down to a 3-day week. So she's consistently in that business on a Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. But on Wednesdays, she's now joined a growing fintech as their marketing director, and the fintech are delighted to have somebody of this caliber, but for a fraction of the cost at a fractional basis. And then on Fridays, this candidate's looking at a few board roles and a few other speaker sessions. So the thinking that, if we really listen to our employees and understand them well enough, we might not have to lose all this top IP. We can actually maybe just have less of it, and still the most important bits we get. And I think that fractional piece where we see people coming in on a consistent basis on a Monday or a Thursday or whatever that looks like, often they will put in an operational person full-time underneath them, obviously delivering on a day-to-day basis on all of those points. So we placed a head of cyber security for a big edutech in East Africa. This person's sitting in New York. He speaks Swahili. He understands the complete environment in East Africa. He's remotely in that business 2 days a week, and he's able to bring all those latest cyber insights into that business. And then underneath him, he's got a team who's executing that on a full-time basis. So it's giving us all the opportunity. We talk about the only way to source scarce talent is to share scarce talent, and really being able to open our minds about how we can all, be able to share in that piece. So that is the first challenge, which is the A3 age. The second one, as we all know, is this AI. And I think now we hear about AI literally every hour. Oh, and by the way, if anybody hears about the submarine people, please will you let us know? I think we keep checking to make sure that are they safe or not. And every time I log on and there's another AI story, and a story about these poor people trapped in a submarine, which, terrible things. And probably we should have a minute of silence for them just now. But AI is being talked about in every single news story almost that we see. We are seeing that AI is coming through in internet AI, business AI, perception, autonomous, your fridge telling you when to order milk, and your facial recognition being able to do these things. Workers obviously are concerned. But what was very interesting, I was at the Unleash conference in Paris last year, which is the world's largest HR technology conference. And a narrative there was, machine learning takes time, which we know it does. And HR is being oversold on AI. I don't think it's going to perform miracles. But then recently, last month at the Las Vegas one, every conversation was dominated by this AI story. So as much as we know it takes time to learn, it is right here, right in front of us. And 42% of workers are worried about their job security. Obviously, we see that software engineers and machine learning specialists are the top growing jobs, and you know that the differential with them will be the way that they can manipulate the machine's algorithm better than they can for their competitors. But very importantly, we're seeing still a significant soft skills leadership gap across all industries, and the soft skills are more important than ever in this AI age. This idea, you know, having leadership, that's the importance of creativity, the importance of collaboration, and the importance of adaptability. And so the focus or the pivot in this AI, that as the machines become more machine-like, we must become more human, and celebrating that human factor, and looking for it and highlighting it, and being such a crucial part of where we are now. What we love, you know, what they talk about, this importance that, you know, AI will never replace jobs that require a connection between humans, that AI might be the most powerful tool humans have invented, but it is still just a tool. It's what we do with it that matters. That innovation really comes from humans connecting and thinking together. And the research that this neuroscientist has done in this space, and she says the most innovative teams are small, between 3 to 7 people. She's talking about them also being diverse, which is fascinating, because in my mind, you know, a creative workshop is where everybody's sitting around one table face to face, you know, sticking post-it notes on a wall. But the research is saying that innovation comes from people even being in different time zones. So, you know, how can you really bring that diversity, different human, the ways people think, to boost innovation? And then very importantly, that they feel psychologically safe, that there is this human side, that they're able to say something which might sound stupid, but it's a safe place to say it, where that human piece can really be dialed up. So Gustav Canton, he talks about, you know, when you invest in AI, start with the people. And he's seen that the most successful companies have been where the leadership roles are housing everything under one umbrella. So you've got your robots and your humans and your algorithms all together versus one department versus another department. And I just love this thing. So we were at my boys, he has to choose his subjects. He's almost 16. He's going into grade 10. And we had a whole lecture by the, you know, head of curriculum saying, you know, what subjects to choose. And I love this thought. It's not asking your kid anymore what you want to be when you grow up, but what problem do you want to solve? And as much as the AI thing, machines can, you know, do their bit, the human potential for creativity and creative thinking and problem solving and that critical skill is so crucial, is a vitally important part of how we live in this AI age. So the third challenge we are seeing is this acronym called BANI. I think CJ Kujenga spoke about it at one of our last webinars. And BANI, which is, you know, an acronym a bit like the VUCA one, but this one, you know, is a commentary on how we're all feeling globally, apparently. So we're brittle, we are anxious, but there's a non-linear play, you know, nothing fits into the right box that we thought it would, and it's incomprehensible. It's very hard to understand actually what on earth is going on. So if we took that to some extent into a talent acquisition story, people are feeling stressed and sad and isolated. You know, the COVID hangover still is there. Obviously with a lot of remote work as well, people are craving connections. And so the very important part of this is build relationships, build relationships, build relationships. And for brittle people, resilience is achieved with meaningful interactions. And our whole motto at Homecoming, I mean, it's really relationships are gold. And everywhere we go, you see our gold heart. We give these out, we host events. We don't know if this interaction today is going to mean you guys are a client or a candidate or a connection or a colleague. You know, every interaction, every touch point, it's so crucial to be able to build relationships that really are, in our mind, gold at every single touch point. So another part of this whole relationship thing is where we've seen in our world, when we're dealing with candidates who often, obviously they always do disclose if they're in another process with another employer, most often we have been able to get them over the line, even if the offer that we're presenting isn't necessarily the same monetary value. And it's because we've built a relationship with them, because we've had this personalized engagement, because we understand them and are able then, you know, to add easy benefits to the package that are, you know, easy for employers to give and high value for these candidates to have. But really understanding and having relationship with candidates for the long term is a crucial thing that results in success. So we've been helping employers build relationships with candidate communities for pipelining, for bench, for building. To date, in fact, we've hosted over 70 tailored candidate experience events locally and globally. In the very early days, we used to have these big expos in England where we had sort of 2,000 people through the door, and we had grannies and pushchairs, and it was just a bit of a spray and pray with all like 50 different employers, you know, trying to talk to people. But, you know, for the past 7 or 8 years, we've now been doing these tailored events where only one employer, you know, owns that dinner with sort of 25 hand-picked top candidates. And we've seen some fantastic results there, where with PepsiCo, we had one in London, and the team from PepsiCo Africa flew in, and it was the CFO and the GM of PepsiCo, as well as then the talent representatives. And we invited top executives from Nestle and Unilever and P&G. And it was this amazing part where at some stage, everybody was kind of brainstorming together about package sizes for, you know, snacks in Nigeria. And they were able to employ from that event 4 top executives. I mean, it took almost 2 years, but they'd built the relationship there. They'd heard of them. They kept them warm, and were able to really, you know, have great success. And I mean, I think that we're proud of that offering. We don't charge any placement fees on anybody who actually managed to bring, you know, to actually have employ. For us, it's that importance of, you know, bringing the candidates to you. And making sure that they build those relationships from scratch. Also, there's a lovely story about the Fashini group, the big retail group here. They've been trying to attract this top retail data scientist for ages and ages. And she eventually came back to them years later, remembering meeting them, thanking them for keeping her warm, you know, remembering the event and what we spoke about. And so eventually did join them. So, you know, never underestimating. Somebody will remember something you said however long ago, and finding ways to stay in touch with people, finding ways to keep them really connected. So the second part of this, Banny, is this anxious. We're all angst, as we say. You know, I don't know, in South Africa and wherever. It would be wonderful actually if people put in the chat where they are, which country they are from, because I mean, I know we all, especially in the load shedding story of South Africa, we are angsty. You know, what's our economy doing? But globally, this feeling of isolation, you know, globally, the climate change and the war and, you know, AI. So there's a massive sense of angst in the world right now. So vital again, and this does obviously relate to the Be More Human piece, but the fact that empathy now, it's also not just a nice to have, but empathy being one of the key drivers in attraction and talent success. And what we're excited to see is that, you know, we're seeing more and more HR leaders actually becoming more geared to become CEOs. So Akona, who was she was the head of people for KFC Africa, she's now the GM of KFC Africa. And it makes completely logical sense that, you know, HR leaders have been people from scratch. They are the ones who've always listened and put people first. And they now are, you know, rising to the top in terms of being able to be the general managers, the overall leaders of these companies. Psychometrics as well, being able to measure empathy. They're also being able to measure potential to learn empathy. So the whole fascinating pivots and innovations in the psychometric space. They say that soon smartphones will be replacing computers for employee assessment. They're saying that high quality psychometric tests are going to start being sold directly to candidates, which is fascinating. Candidates really wanting to, you know, take it upon themselves to make themselves more marketable. And also this trend apparently that our, you know, our Garmin or our Apple Watch is going to start being able to give data to our psychometric assessment of how we are actually, our capacity for empathy and all of those pieces too. So a real part of this empathy story, it's again the listening, it's again understanding, it's again putting yourself in your employees' shoes, is that when employees feel empowered, and that they can be their true selves at work, they're not second guessing every decision, they can wear whatever they want, or they can be themselves, that they are far more motivated, far more committed, and far more loyal. And you are solving, not just for your company's success, but for the employee's own feelings of anxiousness. Being part of a community at work is a really amazing way that people are being able to feel less angst in this crazy world of ours. 100%. So the third part of Banny is this non-linear place, and this idea of old logic no longer holding true. And the Deloitte recent human capital report has spoken about the end of jobs. The research, and I suppose we know this, is the fact that, when you unbox from jobs, workers can become far more innovative. And they don't have to just stick there. They can look holistically across the company and see what things need to be done. They also talk about having role auditions. So instead of having interviews, I know obviously people do case studies and all the rest, but instead of the first and second round of interviews being mainly tell me what you did, looking back at what you did. I mean, obviously that's important, but having role auditions there and then, because it's showing their potential to being able to grasp concepts and do different roles versus just one job. So the importance of more and more being able to hire for transferable skills rather than just job-specific skills. We're seeing where we're having a lot of success with our employers is we'll get a job description, and if it does look quite hard, a unicorn job description, we often say, can we treat this as part one of the JD? Because we come back with every single role that we do and work on, we come back very quickly, 7 days, in fact, which is one of our key selling points, with a long list of the talent that are out there. Some of them we haven't been contacted yet, but you start to see, oh my gosh, I could have that skill, and I could have that skill, and I could have that skill. And even though the JD wants 8 years, I could get this person for 5 years and plug the hole there with this, or I must have this on a fractional basis, or actually I know that this job might change quite soon into this, so you can bring a piece of that guy because there's a trend that might come along. And instead of starting with a job description, have an idea of what you want this person to do, look at what's out there, look at who's keen, and know that you're hiring for their transferable skill, potential, and ability to learn, and willingness and potential to learn. We're also so excited to see is this importance that qualifications aren't everything. Sometimes, and maybe masters in South Africa is not as common as it might be in Kenya or England or wherever it is, but we've had trouble before trying to present unbelievably strong candidates who don't have a master's. And if they don't, then the employer doesn't even want to see them. But we're seeing globally now this is being more relaxed, which is fantastic. So qualifications as being an absolute minimum tick box is falling away. And then the importance as well of this, unboxing from jobs is the ability to upskill and reskill employees, and not necessarily sending them away to Gibbs or wherever to go now learn a new skill. What we're doing a lot of is actually bringing fractional professionals in to be working with different employees and teaching them as they go in real life situations, upskilling and reskilling people in real time, in the real world. So the last part of this Banny is this feeling of incomprehensibility, the idea that literally we are figuring it out as we go along. And in our world as an executive search firm and recruitment firm and talent play, I mean, things are moving so quickly, and it's literally, we say we figure, which is we're figuring it out as we go along. So we in our world, and the importance and the pivot or the innovation or the focus is this importance of getting some predictability. And in the world of predictability, that is where big data and AI can certainly come in. And so what we're doing in our world, we're actually building an algorithm. We're going to call it predictability. which will measure all the functional pieces, as well as empathy, as well as potential to learn and willingness to learn, and all of those data points that you can pull from different places. But at the same time, we know, as we've just said before with this whole machine story, that a machine is never going to be able to build relationships and storytell and intuitively, understand the candidate and being able to negotiate and really enhance that experience. And so we relieved in our world to know that, you will always need both, that the trusted algorithm and the trusted advisor are absolutely crucial when you're dealing with people, when you're hiring them, when you're looking after them, when you're retaining them. And in our world of predictability, that is something that we're doing. But as we know, machine learning takes time. So it's, medium term at best that's going to be ready. But we as well are craving in our world as an executive search firm, right now, it's all project-based. We'll get a role, we get a role, we get a role, we get a mandate. We don't know, sometimes we're going to get 5 mandates today, or, not one for another week. And that's unpredictability, is a crazy part of the world that we ourselves as a company, as an independent, amazing, incredible executive search firm is trying to solve. And so what we've come up with to give ourselves predictability is the idea of giving you predictability too. So it's this idea of really being able to hold hands with employers and really understanding them, and being able then to give you this predictability of flat fees. So goodbye to the percentage. The way that we've built it, and I'd love to hear people's opinions on it, is the rate would be for just $975 a month. You would get these value adds of either an employer branding package where, we put ads for you on our different platforms, our newsletters, and being able to sponsor one of these webinars. We have an event on our roof every month, and being able to do candidate experience testimonials, and also an audit of the touch points of what we think your talent acquisition journey looks like. Or employers could choose a benchmarking package, which is, 2 remuneration reports a year, dependent on what you want to find out in which country for which job family. Or a value add here could be a mapping package. We want to understand who is where, what they're earning, all of the rest. And again, employers can go, oh, and we're already working with a couple who are going, I want a bit of this and a bit of this and a bit of this. So that partnership, being able to say, we can really start understanding you because we're now properly holding hands with you. And if you give us that predictability of, you monthly, you are paying us and we're your partners, that this is where we can give this flat placement fee structure, which we believe in the world of service and quality that we give is an incredibly strong deal. So no more percentage, no upfront fees required. And as long as we give an exclusivity to work on that role, for any candidate earning less than $40,000 a year, it would be a flat $2,500 fee. For any candidate between $40,000 and $100,000 a year, which is sort of 2 million Rand equivalent, it's a $5,500 flat placement fee, and $8,000 placement for any candidate over 2 million Rand or $100,000. And so we're hoping, and what we think is that gives you guys predictability when you're planning your budgets, that there's never going to be any questions around, what does the percentage going to end up at? And, you would now have the predictability of going, well, this is exactly how much Homecoming is going to cost us. Theoretically, you would then give us more work. Theoretically, we would give you much better candidates quickly because we're doing your branding and your benchmarking. And we would get that predictability, which in this world of Banny is such a crucial part for us. So I'd love to hear any comments or questions on this program. And just to end the last piece, importantly, I think the program, if you had to look at the percentage, it's the equivalent of an average of a 6.5% placement fee, which for executive search is hugely, ridiculously valuable, I believe. So just as a last slide, we've been around since 2003. We're independent. We've been working across Africa for almost 2 decades, in fact, our 20th birthday in November. The permanent part-time and hourly talent we offer, so permanent is our main bread and butter. part-time, we're doing interim roles, and board roles fit in there, as well as your fractional placements. And then in the hourly talent bucket are your sector specialists who can be hired by the hour, or speakers, or guides, which is, it's another word for a mentor or a coach. They're not mentors or coaches, they're guides who can handhold on an hourly basis if there's a sort of a project that needs completing and advising on, or a negotiation thing that needs sorting. So those are the buckets that we work in. We've worked across 30 different African countries. We've got a current database of about 20,000 vetted strong professionals, but that's not the only place we look. We start there, but every search, you know, we look under every rock and use lots of different talent sourcing methodologies, and a lot across all industries. You know, your banking, your retail, your advisory, FMC, logistics, nonprofits, and importantly too, it's not just your big corporates or your lots of work we're doing. We're part of the Launch Africa Venture Stable, and we're one of the different portfolio companies. There are 130 of us, which is mainly B2B tech companies growing quite quickly. And so we are placing strong candidates into growing startups as well. And often those are fractional people, but we also like to think we understand the rare animal who can join startups. So we're delighted to be playing that role in both corporate and in startups and growing ventures across the continent. So that is us. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'd obviously love to, you know, open the floor if there are any questions or comments, or, you know, maybe we can set the scene. So let me stop sharing. And we have a question.
From Cape Town.
Hi, from Cape Town and from Kenya, and where's everybody else? We would love to know. It's always good to understand, you know, what different trends you're seeing or where you are. This has been so interesting. Thank you. Thank you. This thing has been insightful. So maybe we can say on a scale of 1 to 5, how ready you think your company would be. Let's talk about the remote question first, because it would be interesting to get this idea. So let's say if 1 would be that your company is absolutely embracing remote, on 5 is there's no way, they're not ready for even hybrid, in terms of, you know, where a company is sitting in terms of embracing that piece. So I'll say it again. Where are you in your world, do you think, whether you yourself as a candidate or whether you're representing a company, on a 1 to 5 basis, 1 being, you know, my company's absolutely embraced remote, we've got a mixture of hybrid and face-to-face and fully remote, and number 5 being, no, where I am, it's absolutely all face-to-face in person. And maybe a 3 would be, you know, we're starting to get there. Good. So 3, thank you, Tobias, seeing that. I mean, what we're seeing, interestingly, is that a lot of our HR directors get this, they understand this. It's getting business to be able to understand that the world is changing very, very quickly. And it's so important to, if we're going to compete, that we're able to embrace this idea of the workforce ecosystem. Often we find that business can come around to it when they realize that this unicorn they're looking for, it doesn't exist, and if it does, it's way too expensive. Then they start going, oh, okay, well, maybe looking at the matrix, I could have this person and that thing on a fractional basis or a different kind of basis. And that is where we are seeing companies and the business side of companies being able to embrace that side. So great. 3, 2.5, 4 is where we sit. What's also interesting, we learned the other day about a remote company. So there's a company in Dubai, and I don't even remember their industry they're in. And I think it's because it gets so hot in Dubai, the weather is absolutely hectic over summer, that they actually have a mandate that tells their employees to please go and travel for 3 months, as long as obviously they log in from wherever they are. But there's this idea of, you know, being in new spaces, shaking up your thinking, being able to be more innovative. And I mean, imagine that, having a company that insists that you go and travel around. I don't know if they compensate you for your travel costs or whatever it looks like, but that it's actually an important part, not just of employees feeling that they're benefiting from something, but actually that their productivity and their innovation increases in a really big way, which is a relief. Grant, hi. Yeah, you've got your hand up.
Hey, how's it, man? How are you?
Very well, sir. How are you doing?
No, very well, thank you. So actually, it was just a general point, and something that resonated with me is I think I found that a lot of the headhunter stroke recruiter firms in South Africa are not open to presenting fractional positions. I think there's an education from your teams on your side of the table to go, guys, actually fractional people can add value. And I'm a fractional guy. So I've spent a lot of time in the last 10 years doing fractional, and I do it because I get a lot of personal growth. I also do it because you can sit on a board in one and you can be on an exco another, and you can work closely with a CEO or mentor somebody, the training and reskilling vibe that you mentioned earlier. So it ticks my boxes. I do that Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, something, Wednesday, something that you spoke about with that marketing person. But the guys don't get it. And I think there's a fear that they're going to lose their fee. I think there's a fear to say that they're going to do they could have done a placement for R1 million. Now their placement's only going to be 500 because it's only a part-time. And it's just a general point. I've spoken to a couple of guys over the years, and fractional here is not embraced like it is in the rest of the world. It would be great if you guys could educate the rest of South Africa through some of those
well, we're doing these
types of
presentations
events that you're doing, because it's super important.
We'd love to make sure that message comes through. I think even globally, fractionals kind of, the word has only been around maybe a couple of years. And then maybe there's also this perception that if they contract, or if they're only in and out a bit, then, are they really loyal? Will they fit our culture? From a business side, but from a recruitment side, I mean, we say, here's your person, we take an intro fee and get out the way, because we know from our point of view, we're going to get more deals like that, because we're solving problems quickly, and that fractional person is going to help the business grow more, which means they're going to want more talent, and they're hopefully going to want more talent.
Exactly, but I think, and also for everyone else's benefit, fractional people are full-time employees. They're not part-time. So there are people that work in your business just for a certain number of hours or a certain number of days. They're part of the team. They included, like, everything runs. You get an email address. I did some fractional work at TFG. I have a TFG email address. So I think there's this misconception that you're employing a part-time.
Yeah.
And that's also not true. You're very much part of the team. You go to excos and board meetings, and you're just this. I always talk about you're a set of hands that's got a brain. And you go in and do what you need to do, and there's definitely a need locally. I've done a couple of articles on LinkedIn recently in the last couple of weeks, and it's been amazing some of the feedback where guys went, oh gee, I didn't actually think that I could hire somebody for 1 day a week.
Grant, we'll look out for them. Will you send me those links also? I think
yeah.
Education piece is so important. And I mean, what fractional people bring in, number one, they've been there, done that, right? You can tell people what not to do.
100%.
T-shirts, paid your schools. Also not involved in the politics too much of the company, and can look at stuff with fresh eyes as well. And many times as well, some companies are trying to test a new role. This is a new role. Is this, going to work? And so a fractional person coming in, being able to stress test what that would look like. And more and more often, maybe I think almost a quarter of the placements we do fractionally have resulted also in then that chemistry being so great that person growing more and more into their business and even become a permanent fixture, because that chemistry is right. And that's especially true with your growing ventures. You've got a startup, and they might just have secured their Series A funding, and it's exciting, and they want somebody like you. They can't afford you, number one. And it's a bit of a risk for you to join them full time, because, it's on both sides. But if you get to know them, give them all your intel, 2 days a week, whatever it is, growing with them, becoming successful, and then maybe you decide, actually, this is for me on a more, 4-day week instead of whatever that looks like.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think, and I think while I have the floor, I wanted to touch on the Banny piece, because I had a note on that on AI. I was invited to a McKinsey presentation a couple of days ago. So they did some fancy people out of America, and they spoke about two things on AI. And they said, pretend it's a superpower backpack, kind of like a Iron Man kind of vibe. And what it will give, what AI will give you is productivity surplus. And the question is, what are you going to do with the surplus? So you've got people who are working 10 hours a day on something, they're going to work 4 hours a day. What are you going to do with the other 6 hours of the day? So as leadership, we're talking now about saying, I've given you ChatGPT to write a whole bunch of marketing somethings, or I've given you a plugin into Excel that helps you do programs a lot quicker. Now you've got this extra time. What are you going to do with it? And what it's allowing now is it's freeing up people to think, and people to innovate, and people to execute at pace. And a mistake that we're making, and we're so scared, this anxiousness that you bring through on Bernie, which is right. The mistake we're thinking is it's going to replace our jobs. It's actually not. It's going to give us opportunities to be smarter at what we do. And the word they used in this McKinsey thing was, what are you going to do with your productivity surplus? Because that's actually what's going to happen. And anyway, it resonated with me. It was a few days ago. I'm also put something together on my side because there's a lot of questions, or people are so scared. Like, nobody's played with ChatGPT yet. They don't know what to do with it, or what is AI? Nobody really knows. And it's very, very, very bleeding edge. It's only been around since November, I suppose. So
very exciting, that ChatGPT. I mean, sorry, that productivity surplus. It is true. You know, those mundane or manual pieces are now easily done. Whereas now you're way more productive and creative and collaborative. Where, you know, it frees you up, and that's a very important narrative that is great. You know, to be able to be more human in that context, and creative, and, you know, big thinking that you didn't have time for before. Thank you, guys. So we will happily send this to this deck. Please let us know in the chat if you want the deck. We'll send that to you. You know, for the HR directors in the room, or decision makers when it comes to hiring executive search firms or recruitment firms, it would be really interesting to hear what you think of that employer membership program. Does it seem amazing? We think it's amazing. Does it sound amazing to you? You know, how, you know, what would be the most stumbling block? We hear that when companies hear the word subscription, they run for the hills. So, you know, would that be a stumbling block, or would we first say, well, let's pilot for 2-3 months, you know, doing one piece and then prove it? You know, should we be offering a 6-month option or a 3, whatever? Any ideas around how to, you know, really prove and hold hands? And also, I suppose the question being, does that flat fee positioning feel strong? You know, hopefully it means we, you know, we get the predictability, and you do too. All good. We'll send you the deck. Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Yeah. So I think also what's important, you know, and it's what Grant was saying as well before, is that this is a new thought, this global workforce ecosystem, that it is a new idea about hourly talent and fractional talent. And I think we went guns blazing, you know, but this is what we're doing. We're selling experts by the hour. And we thought there'd be demand overnight for all of this talent, but it is growing demand. And I think that's, again, that education job. You know, when employers realize, oh, actually, I can have access to this person. So the idea would be, if you can please spread the word, if you can please let us know whoever else would be interested in hearing about this, because you guys yourselves on this call could also be, you know, we could represent you in your own capacity, and, you know, sell you for an hour here or there, or a board role, whatever that looks like. I mean, I think it just goes back to this whole ecosystem, the power of relationships, the power of sharing, you know, the IP, the precious IP that we all have. I mean, obviously there are considerations about, you know, non-disclosures, and we're very careful about that side. But really embracing this idea of collaboration, sharing talent, and please pass the message on. So I think we're at time, unless there are any last comments. It's been great to welcome you all. Thank you.